This is the Personal Finance Show.
Hi, I'm Bo Humphreys, and this is the Personal Finance Show. Kylie Travers turns obstacles into opportunities. During a 3-year period, Kylie lived through spousal abuse and a subsequent divorce. She was homeless, robbed of everything, including her underwear. She was temporarily paralyzed, had a cancer scare, and on top of all this, had to figure out how to support her 2 girls who had been diagnosed with learning disabilities and needed extra care, which costs extra money. But Kylie didn't let any of this get her down. In that same 3-year period, she was the speaker at the first FinCon conference in Chicago in 2011. She won Best International Personal Finance Blog at the Plutus Awards at FinCon in 2012 and 2013. Kylie runs her own successful business where she is consultant, influencer, ambassador, marketer, and is involved in charity work in Australia, which led to her being named finalist for Young Australian of the Year in 2015. Kylie's written several personal finance books, which are available on her personal finance site called thethriftyissue.com.au, and has a ton of free resources and blog posts at kylietravers.com.au. In July 2018, I traveled to Australia to join my wife, Kayla, who was doing a 1-month exchange with the Sydney Hospital as part of her McMaster University medical training here in Hamilton. We already had plans to head to Melbourne for a weekend, so I reached out to Kylie, who lives there, and she agreed to meet me in Carlton Gardens to tell her inspirational personal finance story.
Well, growing up, my dad was really open about finances and about the budget that they had. I remember him having this book, like a ledger, where he wrote down everything they spent, all his income coming in.
Oh, wow, okay.
I knew from a young age exactly what he earned and when he got promotions and how much that was. We were given chores from a young age too, and so each chore had like a set amount that it was worth. Yeah, I remember when I was really, really young, my older brother and sister didn't particularly want to do a lot of chores, and my younger siblings were a bit too young. So I'm like, I'll do heaps.
Oh,
and
yeah.
I ended up earning more than my brother and sister, who were, my older brother's 5 years older than me. Yeah, and my dad sort of, even then with our pocket money, taught us how to budget, and we had to pay tithing. And
So why do you think you would be like, I'll do that? Like, what was the motivation at the
money.
time? How was the motivation of money? How old are you again?
Oh, I think I was 8.
Okay. But you just knew money was something you could do something with?
Yeah, that was it. Like, money sort of gave freedom. You had choices with money. And because I think we weren't very wealthy, my family.
Okay.
But I had friends at school that were quite wealthy, and they could do whatever they wanted and that sort of thing. So I remember, we had a catalogue run or paper route from when I was really little. I was 8 and 9 years old, going around delivering newspapers and stuff.
Yeah.
And I was really bad at saving, though. I was always great at making more money. I could always generate more money, but it just was like water through my fingers.
Well, what are you spending? What are you spending money on?
Oh, lollies. I was a fat kid.
Okay.
So
just whatever you wanted.
Yeah, because there was a little shop at the end of my paper route that I would go through, and I'd stock up on lollies and junk and stuff.
Perfect.
And then scoff it all before I got home, so I wouldn't have to share with my siblings.
Yeah, I'm sure
it's
they would.
mine.
Yeah, well, it's your money.
Well, that's it.
But they probably didn't care about that.
No, they were doing the same thing, but we did it all at different times. I think, we were always sort of exposed to that.
You knew that if I earn this money, I can buy the things that I want.
Yeah.
And so that mentality kept going a little bit. But did you remember getting other jobs as you're growing up? Or
always.
Ability to make money?
I was always looking for ways to make money.
Okay.
I remember when I was 12 or 13, because we had moved to Canberra by this time, and we went back to Tasmania to visit family, and I found this book in a second-hand shop there about ways to make and save money. And I was going, And then I was looking at the real estate down there, and I saw this really cheap home near my grandma, and I went through this book, and I worked out exactly how I'd be able to pay the mortgage and everything.
Whoa, okay.
And I've approached my dad, and I've gone, this is what I want to do, this is my plan, and I just need you to go guarantor on the loan. And my dad looks at me and he goes, no. And I'm like, but Dad, I have the plan. I can do this. This is how I can do it. And here's all the different ways I can make money. And I know that so-and-so will pay me to do this. And, I'm already babysitting. And next year I'll be old enough to work at Woolworths, like the local supermarket.
Okay.
And he's like, well, what if you don't get a job there? And I was like, going, Uncle Glenn's like the head.
Yeah.
Like,
it's pretty much guaranteed.
And Kane works there and Rachel works there and you got them jobs, you'll get me a job. And which is a really horrible, entitled expectation.
Well,
like,
yeah,
sort of
like
opinion
I'm going to get a job.
You're going to make it happen, Dad. Yeah, and he was just like, no way, it's not going to happen. And it's interesting because I look back now and I'm like, no way would I give my 13-year-old a mortgage and co-sign a loan and stuff. I can see where he's coming from now.
That's amazing that you came up with that plan.
Yeah.
So he said no, and then, did you end up getting that job?
No. Oh, I did get the Woolworths job, yeah. But I didn't. I went down and I filled out an application and I wrote on the bottom that I'm Kane's sister. And Kane, my older brother, was a supervisor there.
Yeah.
And 2 days later or something, my brother rings up and he's like, you're still looking for a job, yeah? I was like, of course. And he goes, yeah, the manager wants to see you. We're not actually hiring, but you're my sister, so come on in. I go, yay!
So they weren't even hiring?
No. And then there was 2 other people there and it was the same thing with them. One of the other girls, her friend, her dad was friends with the manager or something, so she turned old enough and she came in to get a job, and So, but I worked there for nearly 2 years.
Okay.
I still did the babysitting. I did sales for another friend at the same time and sort of earned commission. Just anything that came up, like whether it was cleaning or selling stuff or...
Are you still spending the money, though?
No.
At this point, so now you're saving for this mortgage that you...
Well, I bought a house in Sydney. I lived in Sydney for a while when I was married, and we bought a house there and that sort of thing. And now I live without debt. I don't even have credit cards anymore because I know that I'm an emotional spender.
Okay.
And I know that if I had a credit card, I reckon I would have that maxed out.
So you don't even keep one
no,
or pay
I
it
don't
off?
trust myself.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah,
So
I think they're great, and they're great for earning points and all that sort of stuff. But my ex-boyfriend, I could see how he was with the credit card and how much debt he got into with it at different times and stuff.
For sure.
And we're just going, I don't want that.
Well, how do you control your spending of the money that's not on credit card, like the money in the bank? Do
Well,
you
I
just
have
it all
different accounts.
allocated? Okay.
Yeah, I have different accounts, and I sort of have like one card that I'm allowed to spend on. Most of the money that I earn now is through the business or whatever anyway, so I just have a set wage that I'm paid.
Okay, so you pay yourself.
Limited. Yeah, and I pay myself pretty low.
Sure.
For that reason.
So you just need simple controls. Like if there's a control that says you get paid this and you'd have to go through a couple more steps to take more money out.
That's it. If it's
not
just all automated,
sure.
it's fine. And I make sure that there's stuff going into shares. I invest in shares regularly and that sort of thing. And so it's just making sure that it's all automated and just not giving myself too much access to stuff that I don't really need. Most of the credit cards that I know people use are using them to accumulate points and that sort of thing to travel with, which is great, but I get paid to travel. So I don't typically need the points anyways.
Yeah, so you get paid to go and speak or do go and write media, for writing for media?
Yeah, that's it. So I don't typically pay for my holidays, and that includes bringing my daughters as well. Like we're going up to the Great Barrier Reef and stuff soon, and that's my daughters and my sister are all going up together. And
so you now get paid to take all of them up?
Yeah, all 4 of us. I mean,
so is this something you would negotiate then with the media, or?
Yeah, sometimes.
Like if I go, they go, of course.
Yeah,
you have to. You're not going to leave
much.
them behind or anything.
Yeah. Even some of my speaking gigs, I've done the same sort of thing, because it really depends on if I can have somebody look after them or not, or if it's really somewhere that I've wanted to take them.
Yeah.
Then I'll be like, well, these are the conditions. It's the 4 of us coming up. This is what needs to be paid, and this is what needs to be done. And
and they would have reached out to you anyway,
exactly.
So they would have to abide by your terms. You're not asking, "Can I please come?"
No.
Did you ever start doing that though?
Yeah, I did, and I actually did it for a lot of other people too, and had a great success rate of securing people, that sort of thing. But I've always, I think, come from the point of really how can I provide them value, sort of thing. And I think because back in 2014, I got selected to be part of a campaign in Canberra doing tourism stuff, and I met a lot of other people that were working and doing similar sort of stuff, and I learned a lot from that about what tourism companies actually want how to approach them, and not to be just like an influencer going to get a free trip.
That's right.
As in, what value can I provide? What media connections do I have? Where am I writing? And all that sort of stuff. Because I think a lot of hotels, a lot of tourism companies and that especially, are really jaded with getting hit up by influencers all the time.
Yeah, I'm hearing that a lot.
Yeah.
They've been banning influencers. There was one in Ireland, I think.
Yeah.
Right? No more influencers.
Which I understand, because I've worked with heaps and we've arranged influencer trips and that, and when we start looking into their engagement, there's quite a few that got rather annoyed because they weren't as authentic.
So they might have 100,000 followers,
yeah,
but like almost zero engagement.
Exactly.
Maybe they even bought some of those followers,
well,
right?
There's that, and there's also their audience might not be the audience that we're after.
Good point.
Whilst they might write about the topic or share the topic that would be relevant, their audience might be, like, for example, a lot of travel influencers that we had apply for one particular campaign that we were doing that was amazing. When we looked into their audience, most of their audience weren't people that were ever going to purchase. They were people that it was more about inspiration for them, sort of thing.
Okay.
Like they came from, it sounds awful, but like, from countries that weren't going to be able to travel and checking out the other stuff that they were doing and liking and that. It was inspiration for them.
They're not actually going to do anything.
Exactly. And so we want to work with people that are clearly, going to get them a return on investment for working with them.
So this is what you're doing. Like, this is today. You're traveling for free. You have your successful business. But let's go back to how you got there. So you mentioned that you bought a house in Sydney back in the day.
Yeah.
And how early was that?
Yeah, we got married in 2005 and bought it in 2006.
Okay.
And so we had both our incomes. It was really easy to get loans back then. You didn't really need a deposit.
What's a house like in 2005? Like, how much did you pay in Sydney?
We paid like $250,000.
Okay, and what about how compared to today? How is that possible?
Looking at where our house was, and from what my friends and stuff have said, and that sort of thing, we weren't in a fantastic area, so it's not hugely expensive. So it'll probably only be about $500,000 now.
Okay.
To buy, which sounds bad. I mean, the area I live in now is $1 million, so it's
exactly.
That's the buy-in sort of thing, and that's a crap house for where I am. Yeah, and then we're moving next week, and that's even more expensive where we're moving to, but it's so pretty.
And we're in Melbourne right now. So,
sorry, I should clarify that.
But you're in Sydney.
Yeah.
And I mean, I'm sure the real estate market is similar in terms of they're quite similar areas, like downtown-ish or
that's it. And Sydney's a little bit more expensive. Sydney has really nice beaches and that sort of thing as well. You've got like Bondi and Manly and that sort of thing, and so those areas are quite high in demand. My preference is actually Melbourne, though. Melbourne, I think, is planned better. Okay. It's friendlier. It's cleaner. I mean,
we were just in Sydney. This is I've only been here for a day, but we saw penguins. I mean, you got the penguins.
I know. Yeah, you just go down to the pier and they're right there, and because we're only like a couple of hours from so many amazing things. Like you can go up to the Dandenongs and there's lyrebirds and everything there. The Great Ocean Road is with the 12 Apostles and everything is just down the road.
I've heard about that. I wish we had more time in Melbourne to see that stuff.
Yeah.
So Sydney, you have this house, and did you have to save up a down payment? Is it how
we
it
had
works
a little
here?
bit. We had a little bit, but when we were buying back then, the government gave us, I think it was $7,000 first homeowners grant.
Okay.
You didn't have to pay stamp duty as a first homeowner.
What is that?
Stamp duty is like a tax basically that you have to pay when you're buying a house here in Australia. Like basically, like for first home buyers back then, you got given money by the government, plus you didn't have to pay all the taxes and that sort of thing. Like it was basically like, go buy a house, please go buy a house.
Okay, so we're encouraging homeownership.
Heavily.
Okay.
And so we didn't have to have a heap. We were both working at the time as well. And so I think it was, a lot easier. We had a small amount, but nowhere near what I would have been more comfortable with.
And then were you able to pay that off? Or
No. So we ended up getting divorced and stuff, and so it got sold. But I made a profit, and
so when you sold it as part of the divorce, you were able to get half. Is that how it works?
A little bit more than half because he kept his super. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. And then super. Just briefly explain what super is.
Oh, sorry. Super. Yes.
Remember, you're the first Australian interview, so you're going to be explaining a lot of this stuff.
I keep forgetting that the language is so different. It's a retirement fund, so superannuation in Australia is compulsory.
Okay,
your employer pays 10%.
That's an interesting thing. I've heard that. So it's compulsory. You have to put in how much?
Well, your employer, as part of your wage, and that puts in 9.5%. So say you earn $60,000, they have to put on 9.5% on top of that.
Okay,
like your wage will be $60,000.
So it doesn't come out of your wage?
It doesn't come out of your wage.
Interesting.
No. Although like sometimes in job applications and that they'll say it's including super, but it's 90% of the time it's plus super. So that's your income plus superannuation, and then there's other benefits depending on your job, obviously. But and so they pay that. But depending on your wage, I have to check the amount. But if you're on a lower income, then the government has a co-contribution scheme that they've had for a while. I think they might be phasing it out. I have to check. But whereas you put in an amount and they sort of match it. So and you get tax concessions for contributing to your super and.
So it's you're not contributing anything to this unless it was included in those rare cases, as you said. and then the government might match it depending on
they'll match it if you contribute extra.
Oh, if you contribute.
Yeah,
okay,
so your employer
how
will
much
pay an
extra
amount.
can you contribute?
I think you contribute up to like 500 or 1,000 or 1,500. It depends on what wage you're on.
Yeah.
I haven't looked at this for ages,
then
so I'm
there's
explaining it
different-
badly.
Of course. No. We're just getting the basics here. Don't worry about it.
But it depends on what your income. You have to be on a lower income for the government to match it
Of
like
course.
that.
So if you don't have a high wage and the percentage is not that high,
Yeah.
then implying that even if you did the maximum, you wouldn't ever get a good retirement fund.
Yeah.
And this is is there a government old age sort of supplement as well?
There is.
for
There's the age
retirement?
pension.
Okay.
However, they keep bumping up the age for which you'll be eligible for it.
Okay, where is
and
it
the
now?
age at which you can retire, I think it's 70.
Yeah.
Now, so
that's where we're at in Canada.
Yeah.
71 is when you have. Well, 65 is when you can sort of start getting it.
Yeah,
But 71 is when you have to switch it all over.
Right. Yeah. We used to be. It used to be 65 that you could access it.
But you can't even do that now.
No,
not
they've changed it. I think it depends on the age a little bit. So like those that are heading towards retirement now, I think there's a little bit of leeway, or there was when they were starting to bump it up. When they were doing it, I actually got really, really annoyed because for Indigenous Australians, males, their average lifespan was 69 years old. Mm-hmm. And so when you can't actually access the government pension until after your age
that
expectancy.
is very strange, yes.
I thought that was really harsh of the government to do that.
That is harsh.
That's, and I just thought, and because there's, discrepancy in age expectancy, like life expectancy and that sort of thing, for various reasons.
Yeah.
But that particular statistic really annoyed me that that's how it would be. I just thought we've already done so many bad things.
Right? Why are we retiring at a time when, I guess now a lot of people are living to 80 something, 90 even, or older. It's more likely, but the average, I haven't looked at average life expectancy lately, but it's probably in the 70s still.
Yeah, well that's it. It's not much longer
like across the board.
Yeah, you sort of get your retirement or whatever. And ultimately, they sort of do that so that our generation will really plan heavily and make sure that we have retirement savings and that. And even the 9.5 that the employer puts in realistically isn't going to give you a comfortable...
It doesn't, eh?
No.
So you have to do stuff on the side or add in your own...
plan accordingly. A lot of Australians love real estate. That's been the thing that Australians have loved.
So property is a big thing.
A lot of... particularly like mum and dad investors, they call them. Or like, I think typically it's encouraged to have a second house as sort of like your superannuation backup. Yeah, but interestingly enough, the property market hasn't performed as well as the share market in Australia for the last 100 years. You would have been better putting your money in shares.
Is that true?
Yeah.
I don't know if that's the same case in Canada.
No?
I feel like people have gotten some pretty high returns in real estate.
Yeah. Oh, there definitely have been. But like the statistic average overall.
On an average. Interesting.
Yeah.
I don't even know that stat. I've never really compared. You'd have to get in really early in the market to have, like, if you have a house.
Oh, yeah.
I don't even know if it's like, it just seems like a strange thing. Like, I have a house in 1950 and then, but it'd be the property and probably rebuilt. But.
Well, this is where I'm living right now. It's a much older suburb. And that's the thing. A lot of the people that bought here years ago and they're sort of like dying off, which sounds awful, going to retirement homes or whatever. And because their homes need a lot of maintenance where I'm at, and there's damp issues and that sort of thing, but they're selling for $1.3 million, $1.8 million, and you still have to put in $100,000 to fix it up. And half of them are heritage listed, so there's specific things that you can and can't do in terms of the renovations and that sort of thing as well. But I look at it, I was just going, wow, so many of those people, if they had, sold it, in the last couple of years instead and enjoyed some of their life, like they would have had $1 million to enjoy their life with.
I know.
Yeah, but they bought it back years ago for next to nothing.
Oh, wow. Yeah, it's one of those things that we don't really realize what we have until, like you buy some Apple stock and you sell it a couple of years later.
And you don't, it hurts so much.
You don't know. and that some people have, but you don't know.
No, you can't know.
You don't realize that.
No.
So is there a minimum down payment for a house?
It's recommended you have 20%.
Yeah.
That will mean that you will avoid lender's mortgage insurance.
Okay, we have a similar thing in Canada.
So same sort of thing. So
20%.
And it depends on the lender. Some lenders will allow you to do it with 5% or 10%.
Yeah.
But it really is better if you have 10 to 20% at least.
Yeah. Okay.
You'll avoid all the fees when you're at 20%. Or you can get somebody to go guarantor on the loan, such as your parents, and they put their house up as equity. And
even on a mortgage for a home. That's interesting.
Yeah. I look at that and I'm like, that's terrifying, because they've done a lot of writing and a lot of work in finance. Well, I trust my older
Eventually.
child. I don't know if I trust. No, I'm kidding.
You got a couple of years.
That's it. I got plenty of time.
Until so they're 9 and 10.
9 and 10.
Said.
Yeah.
Okay. So
yeah.
the girls. So let's go back. So you're in Sydney.
Yep.
You sell your house as part of the divorce.
Yep.
And then you got the girls.
Yeah.
And so you have a nice chunk of change then
Kind
to
of,
work
yeah.
with.
Yeah.
But how are you making money at this point? How were you making money when
Sorry.
you were living in the house? Yeah.
Step it back a little.
Sure. Yeah. Let's go back. Yeah.
We separated. We originally were in Australia. You have to be separated for 1 year and a day before you can
1 year and
divorce.
a day. Okay.
Before you can apply for divorce, and then
Sure.
you have to go through the court process. So we had separated. We were living in the same home to begin with, and it just got too dangerous for me to live there.
So,
and
it was abusive.
He was abusive.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the girls and I had to leave. So I was renting elsewhere, and he had the house. Yeah, and I kept trying to push the sale of the house, but there was renovations of the kitchen which hadn't been finished, and so he was putting off doing the renovations, and it was getting really, really messy. And then I actually got robbed of everything, including my underwear. So I had nothing.
Okay, so you're in your rental place, and
Robbed of.
you just somebody breaks in
Yeah,
or whatever.
within a week of living there, somebody broke in and stole all my personal belongings. So everything from my bedroom and bathroom.
And these were
was
like,
gone.
what's the value of this stuff? Probably not even that much, right?
No, well, you would. I had
Did you
an
have some
extensive jewelry
valuables?
collection.
Okay, you had that. Okay.
My sister-in-law is a jeweler.
But the
so-
underwear and everything.
Well, the
like-
underwear was really rare. But when we added it up, and the police found it rather amusing. I had about $4,500 worth of lingerie because when I'd left,
Really?
well, yeah,
Really?
I know.
But can they resell this?
Well, some of it you can actually, and there's
What?
quite a market for used underwear. It sounds awful.
That does sound awful.
But no, the particular brands that I had, I regularly see on eBay and stuff like that.
Really?
Yeah, they're quite nice. Yeah.
So you had all of this
Yeah,
like valuable.
Yeah, well, I left him, and that was one of the things that I kind of did because I wasn't allowed to wear lingerie during my marriage, and so I had to dress very plain. He was quite controlling, and so when I left, I was going, I can do whatever I want, and I hadn't paid $4,500 for all this stuff. But when we added it all up, I was just like, oh my gosh! And so that alone, and then the few clothes that I did have. Again, were $300 a dress and resell really well, and the shoe collection that I had as well. But I was a real bargain shopper. Like I always got this stuff like
You
dirt
got
cheap.
You got good deals.
Yeah, and
So you had like an investment. These were your investments.
Could have been.
This was your savings almost.
So well, that was it, and
it all went.
it was all stolen.
Oh.
And so I had nothing. Yeah, we had to move again, and then my daughters and I actually ended up homeless for a while because my ex-husband was stalking us and all this sort of stuff. So during this time specifically, when I had a home or had somewhere I was buying stuff to resell, and books did really, really well, some clothing because I knew what brands to look for. And I lived in a lower socioeconomic area, and so the second-hand shops had a lot of really nice branded clothing for really cheap, and then I'd chuck it on eBay and sell it for, buy it for $2, sell it for $50 type thing.
So you're making money from arbitrage.
Yeah.
Now, and you kind of learned this when you were younger, it sounds like.
Yeah,
right,
that's
by being kind of an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
And so this is where you went, where you're like, I need money, I need money fast.
That's it. And I also had my blog at the time. I did have a blog at the time, and I was writing about that.
Your personal blog? Or?
Yeah, personal finance. So I set a goal to be a millionaire by the time I was 30.
Okay.
And I had started that in my marriage, and I was writing about it and that sort of thing. So I had that. I did have a book already published with Wiley.
Okay.
And so I was getting, there was some royalties sort of thing. They're not huge, but
So how did you get this book deal if we go back?
Okay, so if we go back in further.
This is during, while you're married and stuff?
Yeah, so I was about 25, and I decided I wanted to be a millionaire by the time I was 30.
Okay.
And I started blogging about ways to make and save money, which wasn't a big thing here in Australia like it was in the US.
Okay.
And
yeah,
then,
I guess so, eh?
I was an attendee for a conference, and an acquisitions editor from Wiley was checking out the attendees' blogs and saw an article that I'd written and asked me to turn it into a book. And I thought it was spam. I totally did not trust it at the time. And I'm
of course.
I don't know. And my sister's like, they're not asking for money, just check it out.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay. And then it turned out to be legit. And so I published this book with them back in 2011.
Did you get paid for the book, or was it
Yes, so I got an advance and all that sort of stuff.
Okay,
Yeah,
wow.
all of that. And then I renegotiated the rights to it back a couple of years ago because I wanted to change it and edit it and all that sort of stuff, which I still haven't done yet, but I really didn't like it being out there anymore.
Yeah, okay.
So I took it back.
Because things are different.
Exactly.
You would,
it
express them
mentions like
differently
Bebo.
today? Okay.
It was really dated is what it felt like. And a lot of what was in that book I write about on the thrifty issue and stuff anyway, so it wasn't really...
And maybe just mention your websites real quick.
Yeah, so I own a few, but my favourite one is called The Thrifty Issue, and it's .com.au.
thriftyissue.com.au.
Yeah, because it's Australian, and I have KylieTravers.com.au.
Okay,
are the two main ones.
So I'll put those links in the show notes. But and at the time though, was that Was that the website you were writing?
No. And I was writing mostly. It redirects to Kylie Travers because it was under my married name.
We won't mention it.
So
you got it.
Yeah. So I had that, and I was asked at the time too to be a finance mentor for this working mums group sort of thing, and to speak at different events, and like that was all paid as well. And I was like, okay, but it felt awful because I was homeless. And I'm going in to talk about money, like ways to make and save money, and then going back to...
because of your circumstances, not because of your mismanagement of money. Well, what was your... Were you not working? You were just...
Well, I couldn't work. I couldn't work because I had the two girls. One was in preschool, but the government preschool was only 2.5 hours a day.
Okay.
And they both had been diagnosed with learning disabilities, so they required a lot of speech therapy and that sort of thing. Yeah. And so between that, and then there was all the court issues and stalking issues from my ex-husband, so work wasn't possible.
Yeah, no time.
No.
You got to take care of this. So you had to, by necessity, you had to figure out how to make money in like little chunks. Whenever you had
when I could grab some time
passively,
to
if possible.
Exactly.
And so you were focused on that. And you got into blogging early, like relatively to the rest of the where we're at now. Like there's a million blogs today, and there's a million ways people write about making money on blogs. But like, what was the first year that you like started blogging?
End of 2009.
2009,
that's when I started my first one. I look back and I'm like, ooh.
And in Australia, that's even earlier than the rest of it. Like, I don't know how many personal finance
there's more now, and there's a lot more financial advisors and that sort of thing that have their own blogs and podcasts and whatever as well. So I don't know how many there is now, but back when I started, I was pretty much it. There was a couple of old white guys that did some blogs that were really boring.
Exactly.
But I was kind of it. And I sort of searched for more and didn't find a lot. And then I came across FinCon. And so, went over
so
to
your
that.
First FinCon, which is
2011, the original.
Personal finance conference, the first one.
I went to the first one. I spoke at it.
Where was it? Was it in Houston?
Chicago.
Oh, Chicago.
Yeah. Chicago was the first one. I went to the second one. That was in Denver, I think.
Okay.
Yeah. And then I missed the third because of issues. But that was at the fourth.
So you've been going to FinCon since the beginning.
I'm an original.
I just went to my first one last in November, and then going back to Orlando this year. It's like 1,500 plus people now.
It is now, yeah. There was like 300 at the first one.
So many speakers.
Yes.
And it's not because they're trying to fill time or anything. So many people have awesome stories.
That's it. There's such value from it. It doesn't matter what you go to at FinCon. Like, all of it has amazing value.
There's all these different categories of things.
Exactly.
And what did you speak on originally?
So the first one was going from blog to book.
Okay.
That was my first one.
Because everyone wants to know how to publish a book.
Yeah, exactly.
It sounds like you got one just thrown at you, though.
I did, yeah, I know.
But it's because you had a blog.
It's because I had a blog, and I sort of I gave details about dealing with the publishers and negotiating, and from memory, and also what publishers are looking for.
Sure.
In that sort of sense, because even though I got it basically thrown at me, I had a lot to do with other authors, and the publishers explained a lot how this is not normal. The way we've done it with you is not how we normally do it.
So they kind of went through the process with you.
Yeah. Yes, I was aware of how it should be.
And so you're able to give sort of concrete advice. Because you just got to have content out there first.
Absolutely.
And unique content, right?
Yeah.
Is that the key?
Yeah, that's the thing. And most publishers want you to have your own platform, because basically the publisher isn't going to do a whole lot for you.
I heard that. They don't really promote much, do they?
Not really. No, they expect you to kind of have your marketing plan and your connections and all that sort of stuff. But I think, especially in Australia, it's that credibility of being published with a proper publisher versus self-publishing that is it. But most of the people now who have really good platforms or great followings or whatever do much better just self-publishing. Like some of our top-selling authors self-published.
It's easier now, right?
Yeah.
But, it's so much
that
easier
was like 7 years ago,
Amazon
8 years
ago. And just even just having, if you have a website and you have traffic, you can publish an ebook.
That's it.
There's so many easy ways to do that. I don't think I feel like the publishing thing shouldn't be a bottleneck for people anymore.
No,
it should be. It's like, if you want to write your book, and then you figure out how to get it out after.
And there's so much information on marketing out there now.
Yeah, so
and
much.
Communities like FinCon are so supportive of each other, and if somebody publishes, then everybody's sort of sharing and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
So it's like finding those right communities for your niche, and just being really authentic and open and clear. And whenever I've done stuff, I try to think about what solutions I'm providing, what problems my readers might have that I'm going to solve, and that sort of stuff. And it makes it really, really easy. So the last few things that I've done have actually been ebooks instead of properly
Sure.
like, published books. And they've done great. And the news has picked them up. And
how do you sell them? Just on the website?
Yeah, just on the website sort of thing. Yeah, I keep meaning to put them on Amazon, and I've been really lazy.
Yeah.
But yeah, like, and the media companies approach me to have it on the news or on Sunrise or whatever. I haven't had to pitch it to them.
It's nice to already be part of the infrastructure.
Exactly.
And that only happened because you got into it early.
Yeah,
because
that's it.
you had this entrepreneurial way
Yeah.
About you to get started.
Yeah.
But now I can't see you making tons of money right away from the arbitrage and,
No.
and the blog.
No.
When did the blog? Did the book start making money?
Well, the advance was nice,
Okay,
but
yeah.
at the time, when I got the advance, I was still married, and he wasn't working, and so I had to use it to pay the mortgage,
Of course,
sort of thing.
so you're
it wasn't
paying.
like-
So you're not working and he's not working.
There was a period of time, yeah, there was that when we were in
Wow.
our marriage that we were both not working.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then you had the 2 girls.
Yeah, we had
Wow.
the 2 girls. We already had the girls at the time. So
Yeah.
it was, yeah. So that was.
So now, like you can't even. Now you're just on your own, and you just gotta start hustling.
Yeah.
And so, how do you make the blog grow? Like,
I left after my first FinCon,
Yeah.
and so I had sort of established all those connections there, and I think it's Crystal from Budgeting and the Fun Stuff.
Okay.
She had a company that was doing sponsored posts and that, so I let her know, I'm like, I need whatever you can get me.
Sure.
I need sponsored posts.
Okay.
And she did that, and I sort of just reached out to everybody. I was like, whatever I can get, I will do, whether it's writing, whether it's,
on your site or their site or how
whatever.
Yeah.
I was open to whatever. So I continued to blog, and then I also at this time started to share a little bit about what was going on in my personal life,
Yes.
because the blog was under my my name, and sort of sharing a little bit about the struggles in that. And then I had a lot of charities that wanted me to sort of connect with them and that sort of thing. And so it was 2011. I went to the first FinCon,
Yes.
and I started getting some freelance writing contracts and that. It was early 2012 that I left my now ex-husband. Well, we separated. Late 2012, I won Best International Personal Finance Blog at the Plutus Awards.
Okay.
And that's when things got really dangerous with my now ex-husband, and I had to find a new place, and then we lost everything,
So
my girls and I.
okay.
And that.
That's kind of the worst.
Yeah.
This is your rock bottom.
That's it,
in
and that was sort of
terms-
like around Christmas time, and then it was after that we ended up homeless for a while, and in mid 2013 I got to move back to Canberra, and that's when everything started to pick up again.
So it
and I was
starts
able
going
to,
up from there. And it's because your exposure at FinCon, and you already had a book.
Yeah.
So books tend to legitimize us
that's
as
it.
well, right?
That's
And
it. So-
and you're writing, and you have this content that's sort of building on the
Yeah.
internet. So you have probably good SEO in terms
Yeah.
of Australia for
Oh,
personal
yeah.
finance, or even
Yeah.
internationally at this point.
Yeah.
And you're just putting yourself out there. That's the
Absolutely.
main thing,
Yeah.
right? And I think that's probably the biggest challenge for most people.
It is. I get asked about that a lot, and I was like, well, in my mind, I had no choice. I had to get out there. I had to do this because I had to provide for the girls,
yeah.
and I couldn't really see any other way to be able to provide for them because I couldn't go to work. And yeah, so I did everything that I could. And then when we arrived in Canberra, I decided to start volunteering at a homeless shelter, and then that sort of catapulted everything. I had a lot of charities that wanted me to work with them, and then yeah, it was the following year that I founded a marketing company and that sort of thing. So it all sort of like flowed on.
Marketing company, you're helping people. You're trying to teach them how to get the word out there and what you're doing. Like try.
Well, it kind of was. So it was founded because I had government agencies and businesses and that wanting to be connected with influencers, and influencers wanting to be connected with
so
them.
you're the connector.
Yeah. And so I found out that I sold it last year actually, but I had. Yeah, and then I had government departments were wanting us to do training on social media, and a lot of people wanting us to do workshops and speaking and all that sort of stuff. And so it was founded without really a decent business plan, I don't think. And then within a year of founding it, I actually ended up paralyzed and had to have some surgeries and all that sort of stuff.
Wow,
So
how? From stress?
Yeah,
or?
yeah, it was stress.
Wow.
Yeah, at the time they couldn't work it
out.
out.
There's a lot
I know.
going on at once. I don't know how you got through all of this stuff.
I know, and it's funny because I sort of go, and this happened, bang, 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 and people were just like,
all at once.
hold up.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it was a lot. It was all within 5 years. I sort of had the worst things that you could have happen, and in the middle of that too, I had. I tested positive for the cancer that my mother died from, and so I had to go in and have an operation for that. And thankfully, they removed some polyps and that.
Like tumor, or polyps, yeah, okay.
Yeah, and it was benign, but I have to go in and have annual surgery because of like this condition type thing. And so there was all of that all happening, and so I couldn't focus as much on the business as I wanted.
As much.
And then and then
all.
I know. Well, I know. I mean, it was still going. I mean, I was still doing heaps of speaking, and most people had no idea my health issues at the time.
Well, because you didn't have a choice, right?
No.
And I think that this is a really good lesson, right? People are just sitting around, and because they don't have a lot of motivation, maybe they have not a lot of costs, so they don't have any urgency.
Yeah.
And all you got to do is light a little fire.
Yeah.
And is this where you coach people on how to make money online and stuff?
Yeah,
right?
I have done it a bit. I really scaled back doing a lot of the coaching type stuff. I do one-on-one sessions. It's more, I often get asked, people want to pick my brain type thing, and I'm like,
over
yeah,
coffee.
all right. Yeah, exactly. So I do pick my brain
Let's
sessions.
grab a coffee.
And I'm like, this is my fee, and I do that. But I do probably more speaking more than anything at the moment.
What's a typical speaking engagement these days for you? Like, what are you going to speak about?
There's 3 topics that I typically get asked to speak at. So how to turn obstacles into opportunities.
Yes,
which
there
is,
you go, which is what we're saying
basically
now.
what I've done and how I've done all of that. How to market on a shoestring budget type thing, so with no money. And then I have a lot of like libraries and that want me to come speak on ways to make and save money.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's the 3.
Do you speak about recovering or surviving these events that happen in your life?
Yeah, that's sort of included in the how to turn obstacles into opportunities.
The obstacles into opportunities. I think I saw a video of you speaking at the reframing of the wife beater?
Yes.
What was that exactly? Because I only got a gist of it. Is that an organization here?
So that's a charity that was in Canberra that they sort of started there. I don't think it was really expressed that well. The idea of it was basically around the language that we use.
Sure, absolutely.
Really has a lot to do with it, and the term wife beater,
indicates
for tank tops,
right?
Exactly,
and it's in lore everywhere. I didn't know if it was popular here, but apparently it is, and in North America, absolutely.
Yeah.
And nobody thinks about what what they're saying when they say it.
Exactly.
And it is kind of terrible when you think about it, because like that's a wife beater is a person.
That's it. And so it was trying to reframe that. Yeah. But it's funny though, because in Australia too, they chose to use blue singlets for the campaign.
Okay.
But it's typically the white singlet that is the wife beater. And in Australia, the blue singlets were often referred to as blueies because that's what the shearers would wear, is the blue singlets, not typically. And so, there was a few things like that. But I did like being part of that campaign, and I shared some of my story in that at their opening, and I was in a bit of media and stuff for
and
them.
The things that you say or call things actually mean,
they
can have some impact, right?
Yeah, that's
so let's reframe, right?
That's it. Yeah. Just being really conscious of our wording, because how we speak dictates our actions.
Yeah, exactly. So so you're speaking about all this stuff, and you're speaking about personal finance, how to save money, like budgeting, that kind of like. So are you trying to? Because that's not like, that's just part of what you do is personal finance writing. Was that like, what were you writing about early on? Was it? What was the book about?
365 Ways to Make Money. It's always been finance that I've written about.
So the personal finance. But now that you've done a whole bunch of different things like the obstacles and stuff, you're able to write about various things. Personal finance was always your core. Yeah. And why is that?
I think because it kind of came easy, I guess, in a sense.
It was always something for you. Money was always a thing.
And it was easy for me to sort of turn more complex things into really easy to understand posts, things around tax and superannuation and all of that for Australians. And it just came easy to me, and I found it interesting. It was something that I really enjoyed researching and reading and writing about. And I think also because Dad was so open about money, and I mean, one of the books that was always on our bookshelf was like The Richest Man in Babylon. Books like that were always readily available in our house. And then my older brother, he works for the Australian Tax Department. Other siblings have worked in banking and all of that. So conversations around the dinner table were always around finance and that sort of thing. Like it's almost like it's a family thing.
Okay, that's good.
I think just being brought up that way means that's one of my dominant interests.
Yeah,
but not in. And I think the other thing is because I've done it in not a greedy way, if that makes sense. It's just very open and casual and
it's accessible, which is what people need, right?
Yeah, that's it.
And like you said, a whole bunch of books by boring white men, right? I mean, how?
Yeah, that's predominantly what it's been. And when I was searching for stuff, especially here in Australia, there wasn't many women that were writing or talking about finance.
Yeah.
And I remember when we got, I think it was Gail Kelly became CEO of Westpac, which is one of the banks here. And that was a big deal because she was female and all that sort of stuff.
Amazing.
And it was just like, there's not as finance has always been a male-dominated industry, but particularly old white male.
Yeah, and I'm noticing, when I did the research for this, coming to Australia, who am I going to interview? I noticed that there were a bunch of women at the top.
There is now,
which is nice.
Yeah.
Right? And I'm like, well, let's talk to them.
Yeah.
Because the white men have got enough press already, haven't they?
Yeah.
It's just one of those things. And it's interesting, like, your dad was always very open with money. But was there ever any gender issues, like in terms of like this, you have to manage the money because the man or the woman, like growing up, or it was Tasmania, right?
Yeah, it was Tasmania.
Which Tasmania does get a little bit of a reputation of being So in the
Alabama.
past, a little bit, catching up today. Hannah
Yeah.
Gadsby talks about
Yeah.
Homosexuality was illegal until 96.
Yeah. So I moved to Canberra at the end of '96.
Oh, wow.
Right, from Tasmania.
Okay.
And I remember my first day at school and meeting people and that. And then at lunchtime we saw each other again, and they ran up and they hugged me, and I'm like, "Get off me!"
So
What is this? Because I was raised that way, but I was also raised
Interesting.
Mormon.
So you had that.
And
Oh,
so
okay.
it was double
and you were
level
Mormon as well.
of
So Mormon and homosexuality is illegal.
and all that sort of stuff. Yeah, it was really,
Wow.
it was full on. And so I look at my upbringing as almost being 1950s, even though it was
Sure.
the 80s that I sort of grew up.
Yeah,
Like
I
I was
guess
born in the 80s.
Decades behind in Tasmania.
Way behind, yeah, with everything and TV and stuff. And people laugh, and it's funny because when I talk about stuff a lot of the time, I tend to get along with older generations a lot more because a lot of the concepts that I was raised with are more
very
geared to them than my
traditionalist,
own.
Interesting.
But it's interesting. Like my parents were married very young. My mum was 17, my dad was 18. And I think they just naturally fell into the roles where dad was working because mum was pregnant and had the kids straight away, sort of thing. And so dad was working and providing, and so he did the budget and that. But mom was really, really good with, she cooked, she sewed, she preserved things, real like Southern woman is what would be considered in the States, real country woman.
Stuff. Yeah.
Exactly. And so I think together they had a really good combination. And then when my mum passed away, I was 15 because she was sick with cancer for a few years. And when dad remarried, my stepmother had been a single mother for a few years and was quite capable and independent and amazing, raising 4 kids on her own
so
anyway.
So she was
independent.
Yeah.
And so I think them trying to learn get their footing there was different to what my parents had. But they sort of fell into the dad had the house and takes control of the finances sort of thing. And they do very well together. They've been married since I was like 16. So that's 17 years or something they've been married or something like that. So they've been married almost as long as my mum and dad were. But it was interesting because my older siblings kind of went down that path as well, where my brother and his wife, my brother's in charge of the money and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And I didn't like that. Like I was in a very controlling marriage, so when I left, it was like never going to happen again.
So you did fall into that pattern
a little bit,
then.
yeah.
I mean, other than the fact that he was controlling, did you sort of just accept early on?
Well, you were supposed to be submissive to your husband,
Yeah.
and I had the kids, so I was supposed to stay at home or whatever,
So
and that sort of thing. And he also worked shift work, so it was next to impossible for me to work properly anyways.
Okay.
And I was just expected to have a lot of children because, Mormon, Tasmanian. He was Polynesian. And so he's one of 7 kids. His dad's one of 14. His grandma's like one of 25. Like you reproduce. Like that's your job.
This is what you do. Okay.
That's your job. And I have wider hips, so I have birthing hips. Is what I've been told regularly. They're like, you've got that figure.
So how dare you do anything else?
Exactly.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
That's an interesting perspective.
Yeah. And I think too, because of the upbringing that I've had, this is actually something I've discussed with friends recently. Was that I always fell into that. So even when I started dating again after my marriage and all of that, and I was partnered for a while, that was the roles that we sort of fell into. Not so much with finance. We very much kept our finances separate, although we were pretty casual. But just
the dominant and submissive role kind of thing?
Yeah, like I did all the cooking and the cleaning, and I took care of the kids, like everything with the kids,
roles.
And did all of that. Yeah, and I was still working. I was still running my business and all of that. But it's impossible to run a business properly when you're doing absolutely everything and then also taking care of somebody else's, like another adult's needs and everything. And I'm just going,
And do you feel like Australia is making progress in that in terms of the equality?
A little in some ways, and then there's significant backlash in other ways. And then we have a lot of problems where we've got almost 2 women a week are being killed by domestic violence, or by their partner, sort of thing. Still, exactly.
Wow.
And I sort of look at those sorts of things, and there's a real divide. And I think it's almost become really difficult because it's almost like men don't really have a place as such. Like it's not that really clearly defined what each other's roles are. And so I think we're trying to find our place in how we're going to work together equally, if that makes sense.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Can you elaborate on that? Like they don't... They're identified in the role that they know now, and they don't have anywhere else to go.
Well, it's almost like, so with my, really backwards upbringing in Tasmania, I think Australia in general was kind of a bit behind in terms of equality and that, and still is in many ways. And so I think there was always that idea that the man took care of everything, and this is how it is, and he's in charge of all of that sort of stuff, and very and that's where your masculinity comes from or whatever. And now there's that massive shift, and there's a lot more women in leading roles, and women don't want to be told what to do anymore or anything like that. And so I think a lot of men who've grown up with really, I'm thinking bogan, but I don't think that's like trailer park trash, if that makes sense.
Okay, that's what that means.
Yeah. So particularly in a lot of sort of like bogan areas where it's very much that sort of is who you are.
Okay.
I think it's in those areas that there's a lot more trouble around it, because they've now kind of lost their identity in a way, because they can't be that really gruff aggressive, dominant men.
Yeah.
I mean,
So they
you
had
can be
this-
dominant in a nice way. Just
yeah,
to be clear, like
yeah, sure.
there's masculine men who are dominant, and you can have those roles in a loving way. But I think the problem has been that for so long it wasn't in a loving way. It was just I'm
without
a man.
any respect. Like,
Exactly.
That's it, right? It's
Exactly.
you can be a caretaker, and people can assume the gender roles that they choose.
Absolutely.
Because I go back to the movie Mona Lisa Smile, for
Yep.
example, right?
Yeah.
Where Julia Roberts.
Yes.
Yeah. So she was like, why would you accept this?
Yeah.
Housewife
Yeah.
position when you could go to law school.
Yep.
And it was her decision.
That's it.
And I like the fact that it was her decision.
That's it.
But if somebody was telling her that she had to stay home, then that's a different story.
That's it.
But yeah, all I want to say is boo-hoo to these guys.
I know. That's
right
the
now,
thing.
get over it.
Yep. It's
'Cause-
been really bad. Well, we had
right?
a murder here.
You lost your terrible identity.
Yeah, well, but that's the thing. Like, it's
That's what
massive
they
backlash. Like we
Oh.
had, so just around the corner from where we are
Wow.
right now, there was a murder of a comedian. It was a rape and murder of a comedian. She was walking home,
no.
I think about 2 a.m. or something. And it's the football fields that my kids play football on and everything is where it
Yeah.
happened. And this sort of happened. And then a guy even defaced the memorial and all of that because they held like a vigil for her and all this sort of stuff. Like, it's been huge news. But that's the thing. There's been backlash on that because, well, women should be, like, there was a bunch of men that came out that basically like women should get back in their boxes and get back in the kitchen and that sort of stuff. And that's why I'm like, I
they
don't think
chose this opportunity to come out and,
Yep.
and say this stuff.
Yes, that was the point where they've gone. And so
They're victim blaming
Exactly.
this murdered woman.
exactly. And with the whole Me
Oh,
Too
man.
movement and everything like that, I'm like, that's like
Yeah, you're a bad timing.
Exactly.
Really, really the
exactly.
worst.
And that's the
so
thing. I think they don't have that proper shift.
Me
and
Too
so
is international. It's
Yes.
big. It's super big
Oh,
here.
yeah.
It's as it exposed several Australian terrible men.
Yeah, and it's good. Like, I'm so glad that sort of thing is happening now,
Oh,
and that
man.
we're seeing it, and we're getting
Yeah.
we have more choices. And it's funny. I sit down with my daughter sometimes and watch some of the movies from when I was growing up,
Yeah.
and they're horrified. And these are meant to be comedy movies, and my daughter's like, "That is not acceptable."
Like
And
16
just
Candles
like,
or things
well,
like
I haven't watched that one yet, but yeah.
But you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Like taking advantage of drunk women, that kind of thing, or
all that sort of stuff, or even
yeah,
just like a guy like slapping the girl or grabbing her or whatever. And like, we were watching Clueless,
Yeah.
and one of the guys leans over Cher and like gives her a kiss, and Melee's my daughter. She's like, "Why is he doing that? They're not boyfriend and girlfriend. He should back off."
no consent.
And exactly, and I've just gone,
Awesome.
Wow.
I love that she's just,
Yeah.
and that this is obviously these are the kind of children you want to bring
Yes,
up.
absolutely.
This is what you want, and the positivity. And then in terms
Yeah.
in terms of the personal finance, do you write about taking charge, or is that
Absolutely.
what you talk about too?
Yeah,
As women,
Definitely.
or just like maybe on your own?
Yeah,
type of thing
I
as
write
well?
a lot about like single mom finances, but also about like women having their own money and things such as like I've written about how to get the money to leave an abusive relationship, because that can be a really big barrier for a lot of people. But yeah, I really focus on that, and I wrote one recently about how to be a millionaire even as a single mom. Mm-hmm. And that was interesting because quite a few women were like, "What?" And I was like, "Well, it's compound interest." I said, "It's really basic. Like, you can be a millionaire by the time you retire, provided you're putting away regularly.
Sure.
And it's just automate it, and it's fine, sort of thing." And it was so many women were just like, "Oh, I'd never thought of that." I was like, you don't need to rely on a guy or your husband or anything. And it's interesting. I am seeing a shift in a lot of the Facebook groups I'm in around personal finance, where a lot of women are now becoming more aware of the finances and choosing to have those conversations. And there's a book here called The Barefoot Investor.
Yeah.
So Scott Pape.
I've heard of this.
Yeah, it's hugely popular at the moment. It's like Dave Ramsey.
Okay.
Same sort of concept, sort of thing, but for an Australian audience. And that has helped shift a lot of conversations and made a lot of people more aware of their finances and what they should be doing and how to set it up. And I think for a lot of women, they've sort of just gone, "Oh, he's really bad with money." Actually, not Scott Pape, to be clear. Their partner is really bad with money, or something like that. And they're making these changes and having the conversations, which is something that I think, even 10 years ago wasn't that common.
But we want to empower everyone.
Exactly.
Not like I'm not good with money is a common. Probably
Yes.
you hear this probably
All
all
the time.
right?
All the time, yeah.
And from women or men or
Yeah.
whoever, and it's not actually true, is it?
No.
When you drill down and talk to them.
I think for a lot of people, they just haven't been taught how to manage their money, or there's issues with people wanting instant gratification, that sort of thing.
That's so big.
It's huge, and it's interesting watching my daughters and teaching my daughters and seeing them and how they talk with their friends at school because of what I've said to them and how I'm getting my daughters to manage their money and that. But the thing with finances is you can automate so much of it.
That's right.
You don't actually have to put in the effort, and you can have it done before the money even hits your account. And this is what I say to people often who are like, "Oh, I'm so bad with money." It's like, well, have your payroll take 10 or 20% of your pay straight away and have it put into savings.
Yep.
So like automate that. There are apps and everything that can automate having you invest in shares and all that sort of stuff. Like you don't actually have to think about that. Increase your superannuation. It decreases your tax here in Australia, like your taxable income. I said, increase your retirement payments and all that sort of stuff. Do all of that, and then whatever hits your account is what you work with. And then if you're really bad with that money, well, whatever.
What's the worst? Yeah,
you're still investing in saving
you blew it
elsewhere.
on something, but you're covered. And
Exactly.
yeah, that's like, these are the basics, and
It is.
that's what I like to do, is teach the basics, because you're right, the investments and all that, it's all automatic.
It is.
It's
you
like
just set it up.
it's like the 5-minute end of the conversation is, okay, now what do I do with this money?
Yeah.
The first 55 minutes of an hour is talking about where's the money, what are you doing, where is it coming from, and where is it going. That's and people skip over that. They think that that's not important. They say, I have $200 a month to put in this, and I ask them, how do you know that?
Yes.
Where does that number come from?
Yeah.
Well, it's whatever's left in the bank, or
I know.
It's well, but if you need that money for something
That's
else,
it. Something always comes up.
and
That's it.
what's your policy on like emergency funds and stuff like that?
Oh, definitely
you
have
would
one.
have probably been able to use it.
Yeah, I used mine a couple of
Yeah,
times over the years. But yeah, I'm adamant that everybody should have an emergency fund. I think it's really important. And even if you're paying off debt or whatever, like get that $1,000 or $2,000 first. In Australia, I really recommend that it be $2,000.
Even before you start putting money on debt.
On your debt, yeah.
Because debt can still be serviced, with minimum payments.
That's it.
But when an emergency comes up, you might need a couple of $1,000, and maybe you have debt that's not reaccessible. Maybe it's a loan you're paying down that you can't put any more money on.
That's it.
And so you're right. Though people do tend to, I'm going to just like up my mortgage payments, or I'm going to crush this debt, and without an emergency fund, and then they're like, well, I just put all this money on, and now I have to get a new, or I have an unused credit card.
Yes.
At 20%.
It ends up going on the credit card, or they get. Do you have payday loans?
Yeah.
They're
payday
sharks.
loans. So do you know the stat? What's the cost of a payday loan here? Do you know the stats?
I don't know the actual stats, but I know that one tried to hit me up to advertise recently.
Sure, yeah.
And their interest rate was 48.9%.
Yeah.
And I was just going, and the setup fees and all this sort of stuff, which would just be added to the loan, so it's fine. I was just going, no. You're gutting these people. Like, you are taking everything they have. So, They're never going to pay that off, ever.
Yeah, never. Credit cards you never pay off. But payday loans in Canada, it's been reduced recently to, in my province, $18 per 100. Yep. Right? On a 2-week loan. Right?
Yep.
And if that's revolving, that's $18. So that's 18% every 2 weeks, which works out to be about 600%.
That's crazy.
Annual interest, right?
Yeah.
So if you're comparing it, it's just ridiculous when you think about it.
You can't do it. And it's preying on the people. When I lived in the lower socioeconomic area, there were so many people there that were like, I'll just get a payday loan for it or whatever. And I was going, you're living on welfare right now.
Yeah.
You can't afford to live. You get that loan. Like, what are you going to do? And they're like, later I'll just declare bankruptcy.
Okay.
That's not how you live.
No, I mean, I went through a near bankruptcy. It's called consumer proposal in Canada. I don't know if you have something similar, but because I was right at the tail end of my gambling addiction, and it was my last option, and I'm like, I'm never going to get out of this. I got to figure this out. This proposal is the best thing for me. You don't go in planning a bankruptcy.
No, that's it. I'm all for it. Like, if that ends up being where you're at, and that's what you have to do, sort of thing. It's like anything. You do what you have to do at the time, sort of thing. You don't pre-plan to do something that is almost like it's like your last resort type thing. You don't pre-plan that.
It reminds me. My dad's he was a dentist for 45 years. He's retired now. But we grew up in a mining town, and there would be these guys who would be like, I'm not going to brush my teeth, and just one day, like, hey, doc, pull out all my teeth. Yeah. Well, this is your plan?
Yeah.
Like, how about you can just brush your teeth?
I know. Just take care of yourself.
It's so right. Like financial wellness, mental health, and all this. Like, you must have to really focus on physical, mental wellness to be able to do all of this stuff that you're doing and have the girls and stuff. Like, because if let's say like you were exhausted because you were malnourished or whatever, or if you had mental health issues, that wouldn't work. So and
it all ties in, like your physical health. I find when I'm healthier and I'm active and I'm going to the gym or whatever, my finances all increase drastically.
It's all connected, right?
And it's funny because when I first moved here and it wasn't obvious that we were here yet, and everything was on the down low, and that I wasn't exercising really, and I was eating bad, and my finances really suffered too, because I just wasn't, I was bleh about everything.
That's right.
And so once I sort of, especially this year, I've noticed it significantly because I'm single again this year. So, and yeah, it's just like focusing on myself, focusing on what my daughters want, focusing on my health and all of that. And the income has massively increased.
Okay.
And I was just going, this is amazing. And I was trying to pinpoint exactly what it is that I've done differently or whatever. And I was going, I focused on my health. Like that was a focus for me this year.
Right?
And then everything else has really fallen into place. And I think too, because, when you're working out and eating well and that you have more energy to do everything. And I know my daughters are calmer when, I'm more calm. And when I start my day that way, my whole day is better. And,
And it's just, you're more of a role model.
Yeah.
For your daughters, for anybody who's watching and listening. Right, like you said early on, you're writing about personal finance, but you're homeless.
Yes,
right.
That was so hard.
I mean, it's something that you could do based on your experience. You couldn't control it, but you're right. It's less of a like. And now, if somebody came to your house to interview you, I don't have a house, so it's more of a once everything is together, it's. You could walk down the street and people can feel it. It's like emanates from you, doesn't it?
Absolutely.
I do feel that.
Yeah.
I feel like that's important that we live our lives in that way.
Absolutely.
And like a lot of people who've been through what you've been through would have continued to wallow in it.
Yeah.
Or try to, I don't know,
the suicide
get
rates
handouts
are
or go
fairly high
that.
for that
Yeah, exactly. Try to end it, of course. And I never thought about suicide for some reason.
I did.
But you're in a much deeper situation than I was. I hated my life being an addict and having undiagnosed attention deficit disorder was my story. And I was like, I'm not me. I don't understand. Mine was like an internal struggle and not affected by others trying to hurt me. So I can't relate to what you're going through. But we all have our struggles in different ways, right?
We do, and I
it's
think
all
we all have
relative.
different resilience levels and that sort of thing as well. Which means that even though mine, is traumatic, obviously, or whatever. For me, it never feels like it's more than what somebody else has faced. Like whatever their challenge was is their challenge, and that's what they had to face. Whether it's like a marriage breakdown or health issues or addictions. I mean, addictions are really hard. My grandmother was a gambling addict, and my grandfather was an alcoholic, and so I saw it firsthand through both of them. And so I avoided both, like alcohol and gambling and that sort of thing. I mean, being Mormon helped with that, but seeing that,
true.
and it is, and that can be like a lifelong battle. Whereas I sort of feel like mine was really intense for a short period of time.
Yes.
But it's not like I had to live with that constantly. And I think also it being external influences was in some ways easier because then those things were outside my control. Do you know what I mean? Like, and it wasn't my responsibility. It wasn't my fault. I mean, like,
no, I guess that's a good point. And I guess I had to get there too with like, I didn't do this to myself for addiction or even mental health issues. You have to get over the regret and the guilt.
Absolutely.
Right? Especially if you had guilt over what's happening to your daughters, which I'm sure was at the time.
Oh, huge.
Like, it's not your control, but like, it's definitely not under their control. They haven't done anything. You haven't done anything. Nobody's done anything. Everyone's doing stuff to you.
Yeah.
And like if somebody was going through like something similar, or even close to what you went through right now, like what would you want them to just keep in their head? Like what kept you going?
So my daughters obviously were first and foremost for everything.
Yeah.
But I had a quote: "I am not what happened to me. I am what I choose to become," by Carl Jung.
Okay.
And I would repeat that over and over and over. I remember like laying on my bathroom floor, curled up, sobbing my heart out because of how bad the circumstances were. And I would repeat that in my head because I needed that to be true. Like I need that quote to be true. I needed to believe that my current circumstances were not going to dictate my future. And so I actually had it stamped on a cuff that
nice.
A silver cuff to wear everywhere. It got stolen.
That is, I don't know, the irony there is
I know, like
insane.
I had 3 quotes.
Oh my
done
God, I
and
can't believe.
Gone. Although this one turned up recently.
Wow.
The "I'm not what happened to me" one. But yeah, having that, I put affirmations absolutely everywhere around my house, and I changed them regularly. I wrote my goals in permanent marker on my mirrors. It comes off with like Windex. I assume you have Windex. But like window cleaner, that sort of thing. But it was like focusing on where I knew I would be, and understanding that what was happening is it's a phase. It's a phase of your life.
Yeah.
And as awful as it is, it will pass, and that it's okay to get help. I was too proud at the time to let most people know what was going on or get any help.
When we're in it, it's hard to talk about it.
Exactly.
Right? Yeah.
And I look back now and I'm like, I wish I had just swallowed my pride and gone and gotten some help from some of the charities and that sort of thing, because it would have made it so much easier for my daughters and I. And so it's looking at what help's available, accepting the help that's available, recognizing what you can and can't control, and then focusing on what you can control and working really hard on that. So I at the time, I was able to control how could I earn more money.
Yep.
Like, I could do that. I could control what my daughters and I did in our time. I could control what I did exercise-wise, what I ate, that sort of stuff. And so I focused on those things and really tried to just not think about the rest. And there's a little technique that I do even now whenever I get a little bit down on things such as child custody and that sort of stuff that we're in court over. Even just this week I had to do it, where if I can feel the really negative thoughts starting to come in, I get out a notebook and I will write repeatedly what it is that I see it being like the positive outcome sort of thing. And so I, around custody, it's like I have full custody of Hilaria Melly, I have full custody of Hilaria Melly. And I've sometimes had to write that 100 times.
Wow.
But by doing that, it's just like, it's sort of like that would form my reality. And honestly, most of the time it works out that way, whatever it is. Sometimes it takes a little while, but it's changing the thinking and also looking at, I always view everything on how can I turn this into an opportunity, or what are the positives that can come from this? What can I be grateful for about this? So even like the night I was robbed, I sat down and I wrote a list of reasons I could be grateful for being robbed that night, within hours of losing everything.
A fresh start. Is that one of them?
Exactly. And it was like, well, all the stuff that I had was, most of it was from my marriage, and now I can go shopping guilt-free with insurance money, and I'm insured, so that was a positive. And that sort of thing. And I managed to come up with quite a few, and it ended up being a huge blessing, because the insurance money covered a lot of the therapy that my daughters needed for speech therapy and all that sort of stuff.
Interesting. And you might not have thought about selling the jewelry from the past, or the lingerie, which is somewhat valuable.
I know. It's so random. I'm like, I always wonder, I'm like, who ended up with that? Like, who ended up with my stuff?
It's not like you can look down the street and that's mine.
That's
exactly. It's one of those things that will always be hidden. But obstacles to opportunity, right? Yeah. There's always a takeaway, always a positive takeaway from something.
That's it.
Whatever you go through, and
that's it.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Sometimes it might be a lesson, so it might not feel like a positive, but I mean, the lessons ultimately are a positive in the end.
So you're speaking whenever, all the time. So people can go to kylietravers.com.au. To find out, if usually in Australia or anywhere.
Mostly in Australia. I have done like international speaking a bit,
but like
because
FinCon
my daughters, because my daughters can't travel at this moment. I'm not doing too much internationally.
Gotcha.
So it's mostly in Australia at the moment, but I sometimes have video of the presentations that I do and that sort of thing, or
of
otherwise
course,
I do Skype sessions sometimes.
There's a couple of videos already on YouTube. So, and then kylietravers.com.au and then the
thrifty issue.
Thrifty issue.com.au. Those are
they're the two main ones.
Your two main websites. And so are you a major writer on Thrifty, or is it you and others?
I do have other writers that can write on there, but it's predominantly me. I have a team that does that helps out in the background sort of thing.
So you're just putting everything together, social media and everything too. I imagine.
But most of the articles, I write because I'm really fussy.
Of course.
And I think
we want our brand to
exactly.
I get it.
And I'm very clear on what I want to write on there. I'm not always super consistent, but it's mostly me, and I like to test everything that I'm writing about, and I want people to know that it's coming from me. I want that authenticity. I bought that website and planned on flipping it, because I flip websites sometimes, and then I really liked it, and the community was really awesome, and so then I had to. And then when I was getting asked to do media stuff, it was like, well, actually, I'm the one that owns it. And this is the face behind it. And it was always for 2 years I had it without people knowing it was me or that sort of thing. And I had different writers at that time, but now it's all predominantly my writing.
So people can go there and find out about...
way too much about my personal life.
All about you and all about money.
How I spend it, how I budget.
We need to just keep talking about this stuff. So it's about empowerment, it's about financial literacy, it's about just taking control of your life.
Yeah, well, that's a big part of it. It's for me, the goal for all of it. And on Kylie Travers, I focus a lot on welfare and helping people get off welfare and get around that and that sort of thing. But it really has been about empowering people through financial independence. Is the motivation behind all that I do. And it's got a huge female focus, because I'm female and I'm a single mom. But at the same time too, I try to really have that balance with what I do and with males and that sort of thing as well. I don't ever want males to feel excluded.
No, and don't worry about us.
Even though it's all pink.
The people need more positive role models. There's been so many white male or just male role models for so long, and it's time to get a little more diversity going on, right?
Yeah.
So don't worry about those guys who don't have their identity and they lost their identity. They're going to figure it out.
It will.
They'll be just fine.
It'll be interesting over the next few years.
They'll have to eat it for a little bit, I'm sure. But this was really great, Kylie. Thank you. Thanks for coming and talking to me.
Thanks for having me.
If you like this episode, please subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcasts or wherever you can subscribe to podcasts. If you're already a subscriber, please let me know what you think of the show. You can email me at bo@bohumphreys.com or tag me on Twitter at bohumphreys. It would be nice to know who's out there and who's listening. Thanks so much for listening to this episode of the Personal Finance Show. Next week, my Australian personal finance series continues with Bessie Hassan, the head of PR Australia at finder.com.au.